The consensus here is that his head is covered. What's consensus? His head is covered, and either all the time or partially, part of the time, he's wearing tzitzis possibly out. Isn't that a staggering imagery?
He's wearing
especially when you consider the 19th century imagery and iconography of Jesus as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Yes.
And
But on that balance, isn't that sad? Let me ask you, wouldn't a random 8th grade yeshiva student be stunned by that imagery? Totally stunned?
I think an average Orthodox adult in Borough Park or Williamsburg or Crown Heights would be stunned by that.
Right.
But when I say he's wearing tzitzis and a head covering, he's wearing a tallis.
Okay.
To the extent that we've all been to the Middle East at some point in our life. Well, we know that Arabs keep their heads covered, not because it's a religious requirement.
I meant
he's wearing a keffiyeh, of some sort.
And fewer tallis.
Right, well, they are very similar in that a keffiyeh is fringed.
Okay.
Well, but there's also a distinction between the covering the head and the tzitzis, one of which is tzitzis midaraisa. You have clearly on Torah will have to do it.
Okay.
It's not exactly a clear source for covering your head. That's
Yeah, with that said, it's also not clear where you're supposed to wear the tzitzis.
But they've been flipped historically.
Fringed garment.
Okay.
I was profoundly influenced many years ago as a youngster when there was a mini-series, I can't recall what television station it was on, Moses the Lawgiver.
Okay.
And basically it had Burt Lancaster in a tallis. I mean, that was his robe, and that was his head cover when he went to see God. And then, scant 4 years later, 3 or 4 years after that, I spent my first time in Israel and came into contact with my first Bedouin.
Correct.
Who was peddling, just for the record, peddling camel rides in Jerusalem.
Why don't we now go around the table once or twice and do like parting shots to the seminar? Maybe give your parting shot, and then we'll loop around a second time. Just your parting shot from the seminar towards us or towards the viewers. I'll go in a circle. I'll go do it twice. You can pass or you can. Well, all right.
I don't know if I have a parting shot as such. What I think I have is a general sense that this is an important book. It's an important topic. It's timely, needless to say. There's never a wrong time to raise these questions.
Right.
Perhaps one could say it's not just the Christians and the Jews, the church and the Jews, but perhaps it's a question of relations of all religions, of all of the three Abrahamic religions at this stage. There's never a juncture where it is wrong to deal with that, and to really open up the question of, well, how did this start? We know what the implications were, obviously. I think your book very well ends appropriately, quite appropriately, with the Holocaust and with the attempted murder of Jews, literally extermination of the entire Jewish people. A point which Hitler, for all of his anti-Christianity and antinomianism, nevertheless said that he was doing God's work. That was his sense of things. I think seminars like this are also, critical, if only to raise the issue with the media we now have available to us, the internet, Facebook, etc. I think it's really this is the kind of, what surprises me, what almost disappoints me, is that there are only 3 of us. I guess that would be my parting shot, is that more people didn't sign on for this.
Doctor.
What I really appreciate about the work is the focus on the timeline. And my reasoning there is that a sense of history is largely missing from our culture at the moment. Even in the most basic sense that events happen one after another, and they happen sometimes in relation to one another. And the fact that you have brought events together and you also show what is happening in other cultures in a similar time is an effective way of helping people, especially at the beginning of their study, to see more clearly the connections that are possible in the midst of events. And it's also an incentive to them to look in greater detail at some of the connections that are possible.
Now, I say that religion, like life in general, is a process. It's not static, and it moves with time, and it changes, and it's altered in various ways. And I think one has to understand this book actually, to a great extent, achieves this focus on the change and the different directions that, in this case, Christianity has taken. But one has to understand, the essence of what a religion is, the essence of what its ideology represents, its theology, and what its basic, moral principles are. And I think when one does that, you see the commonality between different religions and what religion is supposed to be: life-affirming and respecting God's creations, human beings, and so on. Unfortunately, in the course of time, political, economic, social, other conditions allow religion, like everything else, to be used as a tool or as some means of gaining some end or other. But one has to go back to the essence and the origins of these different movements and what they represent. And I think once people understand that and focus in on what is really important, the kernel, a core of each religion, will see that the differences are negligible, and that unfortunately human beings who have the capacity and often do corrupt and degrade what's a noble ideal has led to the tragedies that are enunciated here, and at the end, the greatest tragedy, I guess, of modern times, as you said, in the Holocaust.
Right.
I would maybe
take
take that and go a step farther. It's the irony, of course, of religion is that it speaks about God, but its goal is really humanistic and to make us a better person, to make us more keenly aware of the fact that we are not the center of the universe necessarily, that perhaps we have responsibilities towards one another, regardless of religion and regardless of where we view ourselves on a particular spectrum, that we have a number of significant responsibilities toward each other, toward ourselves. If you want to look at it as a series of circles, towards ourselves, towards our family, towards our friends and our group, our neighbors, but also towards all of humanity ultimately. This is the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, of making the world a better place. Our purpose, the purpose God put us here for, was to leave this earth better than we found it.
That's an eloquent statement, and I wonder if I may to qualify it with a doubt I have about religion itself. One of the worst ideas I think Augustine ever had was that of original sin. And I think Christianity can get on very well without original sin, the idea that the very act of procreation makes a person sinful. But there is a sense in which I think religions have a tendency. The idea of God in itself is comprehensive. Its aim is to explain everything, to motivate all important relationships and actions. That's what it's there for. And when it does that effectively, it easily assumes the attitude that it alone has the capacity to do that. So the learning of tolerance and respect has only been possible historically. There is some work that only history in its ordinary secularity can do. So I think one of the values of this book is that it helps us to temper our religion, whatever that religion might be.
Interesting. Excuse me?
Yeah,
Interesting.
I would just, if I may, my only disagreement with you would be on the question of religion versus organized religion.
I agree with you, and religion versus idolatry. We were on idolatry just this past Sunday, and I think that when religion falls into what I describe as a kind of narcissism, then we're dealing with idolatry, of course. Yeah. I totally agree with that.
I think it's interesting that you're both converging to the precise point.
Just an anecdote. A lot of years ago, when I was teaching at the University of Texas, I taught a course on the Holocaust, and huge lecture hall full of students. At the end of the semester, one student, it was probably a Baptist, because almost everyone was, said, Professor, you're a religious guy. Let me ask you a question. You believe in God. Where was your God when 6 million of your co-religionists were killed in Auschwitz? And I said, you're asking the wrong question. The question is not where was God. The question is where was man. We know where God stands. It's very clear. It's one of the big 10, right? So the point is that obviously religion gives man a pathway, a blueprint, how he should live his life, how he should act vis-a-vis his fellow man, and how he has a moral responsibility. The fact that mankind unfortunately departs from that path is not a reflection or a condemnation of religion. It's unfortunately a weakness inherent in human beings who are less than perfect.
Yeah. So perhaps on this fine, erudite note, we'll finish this symposium. And I'm going to thank everyone here, and I also want to thank Nora Mosa, for organizing it. Thank you, Nora. Nora's the organizer. She's a point person, and Nora actually was born in Malaysia, right? And tell us more about your family, Nora.
Oh yeah, I was born Muslim. Yes.
Right, and Nora helps me out on my different books on philosophy and Jewish history. And I tell my friends she's one of the. She probably knows more than you guys do. So thank you, Nora, and keep up the great work, Nora. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.